Because 80% of property markets across the country have seen house prices fall in 2023. That's according to new figures from property portal Zoopla.
Well, coming as households continue to battle higher mortgage rates and stubborn inflation, the Bank of England are reporting the lowest mortgage approvals seen since January.
Well, joining us now in the studio is Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor with On the Money.
Mortgage, Liam, it's getting more and more difficult.
It is, and interest rates are going up, and the banks, the building societies are now restricting credit. This is how recessions start, and it seems to me Britain's policy-making establishment feels that we need to drive the economy into a recession to get inflation down. I don't agree with that at all. Inflation's already coming down quite sharply, and it will come down even more sharply even if we just cool our boots and don't raise interest rates anymore and don't restrict credit. But anyway, in September, these are the numbers. I've got a little graphic for you, Ellie and Martin. House prices were down in 80% of local UK property markets, with the focus, the biggest falls in London and the South East. 43,000 mortgages were approved in September, according to Bank of England figures out this morning. That's the lowest since January, as you say. But check this out. 20,600 remortgages were approved. That's a 24-year low. And that is really a major sort of source of demand in the economy, is when people remortgage and do up their house or spend some more money on another house or whatever. And of course, we've got this Bank of England interest rate decision this coming Thursday, and I'll be reporting about that from Thread Needle Street. Of course, interest rates are now 5.25%. We've seen 14 rate rises in a row, but last month the Bank of England held interest rates. I sincerely hope they hold them again on Thursday. I personally think, I'll use some strong language, I personally think it would be nuts to raise interest rates again when you've had 14 rate rises. These things take time to work through the system. We're now seeing the implications of those rate rises in the mortgage data, in the house price data. So I appeal to the 9 members of the Monetary Policy Committee: hold your fire.
Is part of the choking off of finance because, interest rate rises are great news for banks. HSBC, 204% increase in profits we saw today, driven a lot by interest rates. Santander, 20% up. Could there be some scurrilous stuff afoot there, holding off on dishing out new products just in case rates go up and they get to benefit from selling you a product at a higher rate?
What's definitely scurrilous is when banks pass on rate rises if you're a borrower the next day, but they may not even pass on the rate rise if you're a saver ever. And I'm amazed that the Financial Conduct Authority doesn't get on the case of banks and name and shame banks. It's left to journalists to name and shame banks, where the bank, the Financial Conduct Authority has a legal right to all the fine print data that the banks actually produce. So that's definitely scurrilous. But I think what's happening is both demand and supply, Martin. I think the building societies and the banks, they are very reluctant to extend credit because guess what? No one knows what's going to happen with inflation. No one knows what's going to happen with interest rates. No one knows what's going to happen to oil price, geopolitics in the Middle East, energy prices this winter. So they are restricting credit because they don't want to take too many bets and expose themselves to lots of geopolitical risk. And at the same time, it's the demand side too. People aren't demanding credit because they don't want to buy a house now because they're so worried about where payments will end up.
And you mentioned a really interesting word earlier, and that was elitist. You think this market is getting elitist. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think what's happening now is when I was growing up, I grew up in a first-generation home ownership house, right? So my mum grew up in a council house, 10 kids. My dad grew up in a stone hut in the west of Ireland. And the fact that 2 working class people, my parents, were able to buy their own home, it completely revolutionised their view of the UK. In my dad's, he grew up in Ireland in the war. He didn't have a particularly good view of the UK. It revolutionised his view of the UK, that England in particular had given him a chance. It revolutionised my mum's view of her place in society. And it provided stability and security for them to bring up me and my brother on not much money. Now it seems the only people who can buy houses, kids who have parents who are wealthy enough, they've got 150 grand in the bank to give their kids a deposit. And unless you can get that deposit, then you can't buy a home and you have to end up paying rent. And you end up paying more on rent than you would on a mortgage, even at these high rates, because you can't get that deposit. This is a major, major, major problem. And I put it to you, Martin and Ellie, this will dominate the general election. Housing will dominate the general election. So let's make sure here on GB News that we talk about it lots.
And hopefully with you, Liam Halligan. Superb stuff as ever. Thank you very much.